Innovation is all about trying to do something different. Like if you go to a therapist, they're not going to
They
give you
always
the
do.
answers.
Yeah.
They're going to ask you questions so that you can discover the answer yourself.
Yeah, I hate it when they do that.
So, but essentially, like, when I'm talking to a key decision maker, it's just about making sure that you're asking the right questions and working with them to discover, like, what are the important things for the business and for them and for the people that are operating in the business, so that they can make sure they're doing their best work.
Right, so you make them cry like my therapist.
Well, I hope not.
This episode, we're going to focus on giving you examples of where web or app development, process automation, on-demand reporting, or just innovation in some other way, shape, or form has driven results for businesses we've worked with. The hope is that by giving you insights into one or more of those things, you're going to be thinking about what you can do in a similar vein in your business to get to the outcomes you're working towards. So, the person who has all the experience inside of First Focus is Kosta, our head of software development. Kosta, thank you for coming up from Adelaide to Brisbane to do this with me today. Okay, so as head of software development and co-founder of Any, which was purchased by First Focus, I want to say a year ago now.
February this year, just
getting close.
So
okay,
almost a year. Yeah.
Cool. So you've got responsibility for software development with your team, which includes, as I was mentioning, those 4 things, which you can repeat for me if you like, and just expand on a little bit to detail what they include.
Okay, cool. So, so there's website development, which most people understand.
Yep.
Something that lives online. You hit a website, you see something, you interact with that something.
Got it.
Pretty straightforward. And then you've got web app development, which is, or just app development in general, which is around building software that facilitates business processes, automations, integrations with other software packages. So build like custom code to achieve an outcome. Mm-hmm. Then there's the reporting side of things. The reporting side of things, businesses need, especially management, they need to have information like on hand, like on demand, that is useful to help them make good decisions, essentially. Mm. So building data pipelines, data flows, data warehousing, basically ingesting data from the systems that a business uses day to day, doing stuff with that data and loading it into a reporting platform and presenting it in a way that's meaningful.
Cool. And just data warehousing, for anyone watching who doesn't know what data warehousing is, because I didn't until about 30 minutes ago, it is essentially taking a whole bunch of data and kind of sanitizing it, essentially getting it to make sense to the people who are going to consume it later. So if you've got different formats, putting it into a single format so that what you're putting it into, maybe a Power App or something else, can essentially understand it and present it in a single common way. Yes, but?
Yes. At its core, it's about bringing all your data, the important data, together into a single central warehouse, like a data warehouse.
So weird.
Yes, I know, it's crazy. So if you've got all your data in one location that's useful, then you can start to do things with that data that is more meaningful than if they were all separated. It really opens up opportunities to create better information.
Okay, so single location, consistent formatting.
Eventually it will get into, so like at the core is just getting everything into one location.
Okay.
And then you can actually like tie it together in meaningful ways to have essentially what you call data views. And the data views has something, it should be something that I could sort of put in front of someone and say, look, this is how we've gone with, if we tie together some marketing data with sales data, we can actually see how they correlate.
Okay.
For example.
Okay. Well, what's more clear is I'm still learning, but that's fine. Yeah. Okay. So that's data warehousing, slight sidebar. That is the reporting function. Then we are on to the automation is the one we missed.
So automation is all about like taking a task or a process that needs to be done many times over a period of time or on a schedule of some sort, and having software do that for you. It's really that simple. I mean, it's in the name. So anything that you can pretty much anything that you can define a set, like a process, like a procedure, like a flow diagram of like how people step through a process, usually can get some benefit out of automation, or at least some sort of streamlining of that process.
Is that always RPA or robotic process automation, or is there a different type of automation that isn't captured under that term?
That's a very generic term.
Okay.
So like, all robotic process automation is some sort of code that's doing something for you so you don't have to do it yourself.
Got it.
I mean, that's what software development is.
Okay.
I think people put a lot of fancy terms around it, which
Love
is
a
great.
fancy term.
It's something that helps people understand what it is that we do.
And if it makes me feel smart, I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. All right, cool. So we've got automation, we've got on-demand reporting, we've got web development, and lastly, we've got innovation as sort of a catch-all term.
Yeah.
How would you describe your approach to that from a software dev point of view?
Innovation?
Yeah, I mean, what do we capture under that title from a service delivery standpoint?
Innovation is all about trying to do something different. All about taking a business's special sauce or processes or products or service lines, whatever it may be that's different or unique to that business, and using software to help support that, to drive that. So it could be something as simple as the way that you do your reporting for clients might be unique to your business. Mm-hmm. You might innovate in that sort of area that is different to what everyone else is doing. Or you might be delivering a service that has never really been delivered in that sort of way before. So you build software that supports like the users of that service, the people that are interacting with that service.
Yeah.
And there's a few examples around that, which I'm not sure we can probably go through that.
Yeah, actually, maybe we should start there because
Okay.
I had one example of that as a friend of mine, a friend and I, we started just before COVID actually a lawn mowing startup where we took satellite data and then detracted the size of the house to estimate the yard size, and then we could basically price that up on a per square meter basis, and then that was sort of a SaaS play where then there would be an ongoing monthly charge, and it would be 2 mows in summer and 1 mow a month in winter and that kind of thing, and that meant we had to build it from scratch, right? That didn't exist, and we did that. So I assume that is some level of innovation.
It is, 100%. And just because someone has got a product that's similar to what you're thinking, it doesn't mean that there's not room to innovate in that space. And I think that's what a lot of businesses do start to realize.
So let's talk about, in your example, in your experience, what have you seen businesses do well? Or maybe a couple of key examples as to how you have helped businesses innovate.
Probably the two main examples are around getting ahead of the curve in terms of the technologies in use, and then the other one is about doing stuff that's different. So if we're looking at companies that are, for an example, someone that's innovating, trying to stay ahead of the curve. So we've got a client that does fleet tire monitoring. They've got software that facilitates that process, and one of the ways that they innovate is keeping on top of all the different hardware and sensors and stuff that are being developed and coming out to market, and making sure that it's integrated with their software, having drive over readers that use laser laser tread depth scanning, and automatic pressure sensing for tires and stuff. And some of this stuff has existed for a while, but it changes. It evolves over time and being ahead of the curve. So there's innovation like that. Mm-hmm. So competitive advantage is being ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. The other one is we've got a training organization or a client that's very much in professional training. So people in business who want to build their accreditations, their professional accreditations, get certifications for their experience, essentially. The traditional way is going to TAFE or something to actually complete a course and get recognized for that. They're changing things in a way where they recognize that people who work are actually demonstrating their skills and experience and their knowledge in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So the term that's assigned to that is action learning, and there's no software that really facilitates that at the moment. So building software that allows yourself, myself, to actually enroll and get recognized for the stuff that we're doing day to day, rather than having to run do a whole separate
it's fantastic
program, which is awesome. So they've very much innovated in that space in a way that I don't think anyone else is doing.
Should we dive in and take a look at those, a little bit of a walkthrough?
Okay, all right. I'll see if I can get that up. All right. So this is obviously like just a test environment at the moment. Just obviously can't show anything real, but essentially it's not too different to any other sort of, and probably the important thing is that I haven't actually talked about this, but there's actually a accommodating mobile app for the people actually using, like, having, going through, the students essentially, where they're capturing evidence that flows into this.
Okay.
So the idea is that you've got your qualifications and your learning plan. So every individual will end up having a learning plan, and the learning plan will consist of a whole bunch of units and criteria. And this is obviously very thin. It hasn't been filled out in its entirety. But essentially, a student gets assigned a learning plan. They need to demonstrate they've been assessed and they're competent in each of the criteria that are involved within a single unit. And so if I go through and go through the assessment, now this is obviously like really, it starts to get very complicated without going through all the detail. But the idea is that this whole interface allows the assessors of the program to see all the evidence that's been captured by the individual, say, okay, that there and that there demonstrates is associated with these two criterion, and can actually say, yep, they're competent, and and I put a little note in there and save that, and just go through this process in a streamlined fashion to assess someone. And at the end of the day, they get this certificate, or at least progress measured against this qualification that they're going for, and a certificate at the end of that process as well.
Nice. So actions aligned with competencies based on uploading data, probably from a native app, potentially in this case.
It's a native app,
Yep. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Now, the other example there was the tire, well, not the tire, sorry, the fleet management.
Yep.
If we look at that and see what that looks like in a, I guess, a UI perspective.
Okay, yeah. So like it's fairly simple from a UI perspective. There's once again, there's a lot going on
behind the hood, behind the scenes. Yeah.
The idea is that this is dealing with fleet vehicles of all different axle configurations, tires, and all that sort of stuff. They've got hardware that is out in the field that installed onto the valves of the tires. They've got Bluetooth probes, tablets that are connected to the Bluetooth probes, and the inspectors that go through and say, okay, well, I'm now going through this vehicle. They'll go around and they'll probe the tire. They'll get a pressure reading automatically as the vehicle drives through. Instead of doing pressure probes, there's some sites, some depots that actually have laser readers underneath. Yeah, so basically all they need to do is drive the vehicle straight over, and it just all gets measured for them. So with the combination of pressure and the pressure sensors and the tread depth lasers, it's all basically done. Right. And then all that's left to do is a visual inspection. The application facilitates that and integrates natively with the hardware that actually exists there, which is really cool. Like, when you've got depots that have got hundreds of vehicles coming in day out, and you've got vehicles with 20 tires on them that you got to go around, you got to move them around. Like, all this stuff takes time.
So it's probably efficiency, it's accuracy.
Yeah, and the benefit to the businesses using this, which is really cool. Like, you don't consider this if you're not familiar with fleet tires, but like they can actually see specifically which brands of tires and on what positions are actually what the cost of those tires are, and compare them with other tires, and they can start to make good decisions around which brands and which tires they should be purchasing, and so on. It actually
headline price might not tell the whole story. Like, I mean, how's the tread, I guess integrity maybe is the right word there.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you might get a tire that's like 20% cheaper than another one, but it lasts half as long.
Yeah. That's great. That's good insight.
Like I'm talking very simplistic here. It does a whole bunch of other stuff, but this is innovation in the sense of being ahead of the curve, doing stuff that before other.
So there's a vendor management and cost management piece there, as I said, efficiency in terms of how many trucks you can get through one of these depots, and there's also accuracy of measurement, right, that leads to those other outcomes as well. Okay.
Yeah, and this is a client that's very this is pure innovation, and just which is awesome. Like, talking with his clients, understanding how his business works, what his clients need, and how we can help. All that stuff ties together to continue innovating.
Okay, so great examples there as to demonstrate examples of how that innovation plays out in real life. Let's talk about automation. When you think about some of the best examples of automation that you've been a part of, whether at any prior to the coming on board with First Focus or since, what stands out to you?
Oh, I don't think it's like different between the automation. In my mind, is the same regardless of like who you're doing it for, what systems you're interacting with, and so on. Like the whole purpose of automation is to reduce the amount of human time required for a task. That's it. And to potentially allow the task to happen, and be more timely. So be done when you need it to be done, not, wait for someone to actually do it. One of my favorite examples, and I think this is actually an oldie, but I really like this one. E-commerce business, like retail e-commerce business, they had a whole bunch of, they'd get hundreds of orders each day. They would have a human going through and seeing the reviewing these orders, and there'd be address information all over the place. There'd be postcodes and street address fields, and people putting incorrect suburbs or incorrect states and stuff all over the place. It used to take this person, one staff member, over 30 hours a week of their time was dedicated to reviewing and streamlining the orders. And it's not just fixing addresses, but basically taking these orders and getting them to a point where it was ready for the people in the warehouse to actually pick and pack the products. They had all the information they need. The full process. I'll talk about the automation because that's going to help you understand all the things that this human had to do beforehand. Because I think it explains that. So the first thing they'll have to do is, so the actual automated platform, they'd bring up, it's sort of like a Tinder,
Not
orders,
familiar.
Yeah, but the orders basically swipe one after another. So they're just basically going through one order next, and the first thing that they see is a summary of the order, the information that they provided, an auto-corrected set of information. If it detected something was wrong and said, this is what we think it is and we're pretty confident, they could just accept it. Or they could manually correct it if there was anything that was wrong. It actually self-corrected with a very, very high accuracy rate, which means that there was a lot of a huge reduction in manual entry to correct this information. That was just getting address information right. Now, an order, as you can imagine, could have multiple products in there. They had multiple shipping providers that had different rates and different parcel packaging sort of rules and limitations, different costs. The app, the process actually, the system actually understood what items existed in the order, their dimensions and weights. It would automatically, virtually pack them into these parcels and present what that would look like on the screen to optimize the cost.
Oh, okay.
So basically, they didn't even have to think about what went where, which package to choose. It just basically presented. It showed them what's going to happen. They could just accept it, basically say, yep, good. It would then generate, update a record. So when you work with a shipping provider, you need to generate tracking codes. So you'd upload the order and generate tracking code for that, for each package. So if an order had 3 parcels, you'd have to generate 3 con notes. You'd generate that, would print the labels, would automatically print the picking and packing slip. That would go out to the warehouse and automatically print the customer invoice, all collated, ready to just go straight to the warehouse, and reduce that over 30-hour-a-week task to less than 4 hours a week.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty it's a very standard sort of process that a lot of e-com businesses do. Yeah. And yes, there are some systems that do certain parts of that really well, but that whole process was just covered by this automation, streamlined.
Gotcha.
And really that 4 hours was just sanity checking, just to make sure, yep, I agree. Oh, there's one that just needs to be tweaked a little bit, and you go through and it just did it for them.
Right. And that means that, they can lift sales volume 6-fold without having to employ another person to do that sanity checking piece.
Yeah. And that business very quickly grew to being national, throughout that period. They were in a big stage of growth.
Nice. And the example we use well, I certainly use internally when it comes to automation is we've now got automatic classification of tickets and automated flows for things like new user setup or user leaving workflow, because we know that it's high volume, consistent process for that sort of a task, and that we just have that process mapped out. So hopefully that gets the viewer, the listener, you, dear viewer, thinking about what the complicated but consistent high volume and repetitive tasks are, or repeatable tasks are, for that automation piece. Have you got an example you want to show us, or any sort of design flow that you want to show us in that regard from an automation piece?
This one I can show is a bit different, and this is all around like user onboarding, like staff member onboarding. Mm-hmm. So this is part of the planning design workshop essentially that I've talked about previously, but we have mapped out their process. This is the process that a human does every time, or humans do every time they need to onboard a new staff member. And it starts from an application management system. So for the job applicants, flowing into a HR system, and they've got a task, like the internal task management system that they can keep track of how this new hire is actually progressing through the journey. Mm-hmm. Then they need to get them into their payroll system, time tracking, like portal, and get their Microsoft account set up, right groups assigned, license, like the correct license assigned, and then their whole welcome pack sent out. Mm-hmm. So this actually demonstrates the flow. All these lines show things that need to flow between the different systems. And like, I don't know if you want me to like zoom in or but, I mean, some of it's obviously there's a bit of stuff we'll have to like take out of this, but the idea is that we've mapped out what we're going to do now. So the stuff that's part of the MVP, the important stuff to generate value right now, mm-hmm. which is demonstrated by the green, and then we've got the red, which is stuff that's going to be continuing to be manual for now because there's not enough value to automate it just yet. Okay. But we could do it later. So going through a process, like this is a real process, it's not something that's made up, it's stuff that they're actually doing and saying, okay, well, what parts can we actually streamline? For context, this is a client that's like onboarding more than 20 staff a week at times. Oof. You can imagine it's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And again, high volume, repeatable tasks.
Yes, okay. Exactly. If someone's spending a lot of time on a certain task, there should be, like, you should be thinking, is there something that I can do to make this better, make this more efficient?
Okay, nice. All right, we're 2 through 4. Number 3 is on-demand reporting, or whatever else you'd like to call it. But basically having the right data to make the good decisions that your business needs you to make at the right time. So what does that look like in the real world? What have you done to help businesses, report on the key numbers in their business?
Okay, so if we're looking at like a current example, and this is probably a fairly an example that resonates with people, like just looking at financial data. So if you've got, we've got a client that we're working with where they've got a whole bunch of financial information about like financial transactions essentially that have all been categorized according to accounting standards, and they need that to be flowing into a certain type of like style of reporting from the platforms that hold the data. Mm-hmm. And yes, you got like accounting packages at the moment, but there's a particular way that they need to present this data so it's meaningful to them. Mm-hmm. So we are ingesting the data, and we've got access. Unfortunately, we've only got access to like the raw tables, like the raw data, and we have to construct it. So that flows into a data warehouse, gets read in, and then we are basically, we create these things called data models. So we're modeling the data based on what's available. And then we create these nice data views that would then present data in a more, like, it starts to become like information then, not just data. So you got like information that then can flow into a platform like Power BI, where then you can actually like provide these like pretty reports.
So I think that's it, right? Like, data can be shaped to tell a lot of stories. Do you want to see a moment in time? Do you want to see trend lines? Do you want to see averages? Do you want to see peak and bottom? Do you want certain percentiles excluded from the reporting? Like, whatever you want. Like, each business is different in the numbers that will tell the story or give insights into what they're trying to achieve. And it obviously starts with the data warehousing, by the sounds of it. And then the next one is what sort of a view are you looking to create, and how flexible do you need that view to be?
Yeah, I actually like to start from the reporting side, just to understand, like, if you're talking to the people who need to make the decisions, like, I like to talk to them and say, okay, well, what are the key metrics that you need so that you can make good decisions? What's the information that you need to know right now so you can make a decision on X, Y, Z, like, whatever it is. If they know that, then you can work backwards to understand where the data needs to be pulled from and how it needs to be presented. If you start from the other side, it's fine. Like, you can still pull all the data in, but it all comes down, like, if you think about,
The
like,
problem you're trying to solve is the question, right?
Well, like, I always like to think in my mind, everything that we do has to provide value to the client and to the people that are interacting with it. So the more like targeted that we can make our development effort, like the work that we do, the less it'll end up costing to achieve the same value to the client. Which means you get a better return on investment.
Yep.
It's a better outcome for everyone.
To do that, though, is there an operational maturity level in the businesses that we work with that enables that makes that easier to do, right? Because if a business is starting with, for us, we work with the Gazelle's methodology, or scaling up, as I think it's more often called nowadays. A lot of that starts with understanding, your BHAG, you work back from that to understand your critical numbers, you go back from that to whatever. So having that level of awareness of what your numbers are that matter, it could be that it's customer acquisition costs or average revenue per user or whatever. But until you know what numbers matter, it's probably quite hard to engage someone like you to go, hey, I need you to build reporting that gives me these numbers. You'll just go, I got a lot of inputs. Can I see them? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're right. I think people develop that maturity within their business over time. Like, traditionally, when I've been working like with Annie and stuff, like prior to First Focus, I was sort of like acting as that person to help people discover and understand that as well, to an extent. So it's like, I'm not going to say, like, if you go to a therapist, they're not going to give you the answers.
Yeah.
They're going to ask you questions so that you can discover the answer yourself.
Yeah, I hate it when they do that.
So, but essentially, like, when I'm talking to a key decision maker, it's just about making sure that you're asking the right questions and working with them to discover, like, what are the important things for the business and for them and for the people that are operating the business, so that they can make sure they're doing their best work.
Right, so you make them cry like my therapist.
Well, I hope not.
No, that's right. I don't have a therapist. Shut up. I don't know. Anyway.
But like, the idea is that, like, it's a discovery. Like, we're helping them discover the information that they think is important for them.
Yeah.
If they don't know it themselves, there's no reason why you shouldn't start. Like, if you can't do that discovery process or know what you need at the start, you probably shouldn't just dive in and start pulling data.
Yeah, and that's why that planning a discovery workshop is so key, which is going to be the last thing we touch on. If anyone watching, what we'll do is we've got a lot of really, really good, in my view, reporting on a on a departmental basis. We've got headline numbers for the exec, we've got departments, we've got very specific dashboards around same day SLA, for example. If you're interested in catching up with myself or Kosta or someone else in the team, your TAM, whoever, I'm sure that we can take you through a standardized view, or maybe not even standardized, just what it is, to give you an idea of what we're using, our reporting functions to show. All right, so that's cool. That's the offer. Go nuts. The next one would be, and finally, is probably the web development piece, which I think is set aside from web design. I mean, that's part of the process, but it's not standalone really what we do. So from a web development, app development standpoint, again, maybe you've given me before the one specific example around, I think, was it Alzheimer's, or was it dementia?
Dementia Alliance, yeah. Dementia Alliance, yeah. So just to previously start, web development can the extent of what's involved in web development can vary greatly. It could be something as simple as like a little landing page, 1 or 2 pager type of thing, very much static. maybe a contact form or a lead capture, and that's it. And then you step up and you got more of a full-blown interactive business website, multiple pages,
Call to
actions, interactive forms, and so on. And then you step up further and you've got actual like operational like functions that exist,
like e-commerce situation or?
Yeah, so e-commerce is that's another category of website, but e-commerce still has like sort of usually a very standard formula, and then you step up further into incorporating your own business processes. So for example, like this business, the way they do their picking and packing and stuff, that from that other example I provided earlier, that was unique to them. They had an e-commerce platform and then they built additional software to actually facilitate their process.
Okay.
So they can work hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So if we're looking at an example like Dimension Alliance International, I think that's a really interesting example because it's an awesome sort of idea. It's an organization to support people with dementia run by people with dementia, which is like a really like fascinating sort of model. And I've been working with them for many years now. And if we look at their recent website that we've actually built for them, there was a lot of consideration around accessibility. It needs to be really simple and clean. It needs to be really like the legibility of the text and the spacing and the colors and all that sort of stuff. There was a whole bunch of considerations that came into play with the design aspect. So there was a designer that we worked with to actually make sure that we were addressing all these accessibility points within the design, but maintaining the branding that they wanted and so on. So there was that. We built a website, nothing too crazy or fancy with that. But one of the cool things about this is that the accessibility side of things had to extend to the management of the site, the administrative aspect of the site. So one feature which I think is really cool, it's really simple but really important. Whenever they have a blog post that they create, they needed that to go out to their subscribers, and the process of managing, like, replicating the information to like a MailChimp or other marketing platform, or doing that manually as a process was, it's not to take it for granted, but it's an extra step. Like it's an extra complication. So the site has functionality in there to actually draft up that email automatically to notify key people within Dementia Alliance that, hey, there's this content ready. Do you want to release this to your subscribers? And then they can actually go through and release it, but only once and never more than once. Mm-hmm. So like it's got like little very things like that. Safeguards. Yeah, it's very specific to their requirements. Like it means they don't have to go in and craft things themselves. They don't have to remember whether they've done it, whether they haven't done it. It all just flows through. Okay. Accessibility, simplicity, like management, like even when you go into the back end to manage the site, there's a lot of the complications and the options are tucked away to make it simple. Mm-hmm. They don't have to worry about, have I done this right? Is it going to look the same as other pages? Everything is done for them. They're just going to put the content in.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where that sort of bespoke approach comes. A lot of it behind the scenes, but from a management perspective, the ability to give bespoke guidelines or safeguards or exception triggers, that kind of stuff into the mix. Are there any other examples of web development you want to get into, or app development, or should we move on to the planning and design workshop as the final stage that sort of?
Well, the other aspect of web development, which I think is like I really enjoy, I think is really valuable, is like even when we talked about like software development, for example, or app development, there needs to be an outcome, that a goal, some sort of reason for doing something. If we look at like when someone goes through a website redesign, okay, they've had a website, they've matured a certain amount, like over time, they've realized that their current site doesn't serve the purpose or the need they want, and they need to make some changes to the site to create better user journeys. Mm-hmm.
Which really probably comes back to better conversion on the site, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, if their goal is to actually increase user engagement and generate, like, capture more leads, there's this whole marketing function within the business that needs the website to support it. You know, and the marketing function to support the website, so that it goes hand in hand. So like this, you know, if we look at Rise High, for example, now this is getting a couple of years old now, but the idea is that they had a bit of a moment where they completely changed how they're presenting the website to be really focused on these user stories, user journeys, focusing on who their key market is and how to like feed that, like basically feed that journey for those key people. The site supports that, and they went through a whole like redesign process, and it's planning and design, like we talked about. So you hear that a few times. And then taking that and turning those designs into a fully functional website with a whole bunch of interactive activities within the website itself, such as questionnaires, property seminars, like they can book in. There's calculators and tools across the website. There's stuff in there to help people educate themselves and to feel part of it, and then flow them toward, like, just basically feed them towards that lead funnel.
Yeah,
like
and potentially also self-qualify out almost as well. If there's that, what they're getting through is quality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and helping people understand what they need and how they can be helped as well.
Nice.
Yeah, so every page has had like a thought process that's gone through it to actually like make sure that the right information is being presented in the right way. Yep.
Okay. All right. We're going to wrap up with just a very quick overview of the process. So every one of the things we talked about today starts with a planning and design workshop, right?
Yes. Yep.
Just for us, that's not sort of a pre-salesy thing. It's very much a consultation service. Do you want to just give us a rundown as to the why it's so important for that to be the first step in any of the things we've discussed?
Well, like when you've got an idea or you've got a need as a business, often the how or the what is not yet like really clear. And even if you think it's clear, like we just to be completely like honest here, we get a lot of like requests for like proposals and like this is what we want, and they've got all this information that's outlined, and often it's very incomplete or very vague and it's not really clear.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a starting spot. The purpose of the plan and design workshop is to create clarity in terms of like, okay, obviously what outcomes you need, like what it's actually going to look like, to really flesh out and understand what needs to be done in order to achieve those outcomes, what efforts involved, what sort of timeline, schedule, implications, assumptions, boundaries, all those things about like what it is that we will do, won't do, can do, can't do, how we do it, what constraints we have, understanding the software, the systems that currently exist within a business and their processes, the people, taking all that and making sure that what we are actually able to deliver an outcome given those constraints. And let's be frank, one of the biggest constraints with most businesses is there's a budget to every project, making sure that it can actually be done. And it's done in a way that effectively uses their budget.
Yeah, because the worst case would be you get into this sort of sunken cost fallacy situation where, you know, you're 3/4 of the way through whatever you think this thing is, and it's just a never-ending cash sink. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Well, like it's pretty much like you start like feeling like, oh, I'm already this far in, and it becomes a big problem. Like at the end of the day, like we're looking to build positive outcomes, like, you know, experiences for clients through these projects. And the best way to have a positive experience is to know what you're getting yourself into before you start.
Yeah.
And that goes both ways. Like you want to know that the person who's implementing this project, spending, like you're giving all this money to, has your best interests at heart and is actually delivering the outcome that you want, not delivering based on what your initial notes were. Yeah. And I know that's a subtle difference, but it's important. It's really important in projects, especially when you're dealing with like projects that are like tens tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, it's a lot of money. Yeah.
No, makes sense. All right, well, we're going to finish up there because we are definitely over time. So what I'm going to do is say two things. One, I just remembered I'm using the First Focus / Microsoft Keep Cup for the first time. So if you want one of those, get in touch and let me know. Two is now hopefully we've given some clarity into some of the examples that should get you thinking about what you can do in your business to drive efficiency, better customer outcomes, drive more leads, etc. If you'd like to talk more about some of those things, get in touch with us in the comments, reach out to Kosta or I on LinkedIn, or get in touch with your TAM if you're already working with us at First Focus, and we can have an initial chat and see how we can help. Other than that, I need to stop there because we got to film some short form content. So we'll go do that.
Cool.
Thanks, Kosta.
All right, thanks.